October 1939, Krakow, Poland, 1 month after the German invasion. Oskar Schindler walks through the Jewish ghetto taking notes. He's a tall man, 31 years old, well-dressed in expensive suits, confident swagger of someone who's never failed at anything. He's a Sudeten German, ethnic German from Czechoslovakia, member of the Nazi Party since 1939, an opportunist who joined because party membership opens doors in the new German Empire. He's come to occupied Poland to make his fortune, and he's looking at the Jews in the ghetto not as people but as cheap labour, exploitable workforce that will make him rich. Schindler is businessman and con man, equal parts charm and ruthlessness. Before the war he sold tractors and motorcycles, lived beyond his means, had affairs while married, drank heavily, gambled frequently, avoided steady work when possible. He's not hero, not humanitarian, not morally superior person. He's opportunist who sees conquered Poland as chance to build industrial empire using slave labour and Nazi connections. His plan is simple: start a factory making enamelware, employ Jews because they're cheapest labour available, sell products to the German military at inflated prices, use his charm and bribes to maintain good relations with Nazi officials, become rich while Warsaw burns. The war has been good to men like Schindler. Germany's conquest of Poland created opportunities for businessmen willing to profit from occupied territories. Jewish property is being confiscated and sold for pennies. Jewish labour is available for almost nothing. Nazi officials are corrupt and easily bribed. Men with connections and no conscience can build fortunes quickly. Schindler fits this profile perfectly. He's already talking his way into ownership of a former Jewish-owned enamelware factory, paying almost nothing for it, planning to staff it entirely with Jewish workers because Jews cost less than Polish workers and far less than Germans. Itzhak Stern is Jewish accountant who will become Schindler's business manager and eventually his partner in saving lives. But in October 1939, Stern is just desperate Jew trying to survive in occupied Krakow when Schindler approaches him about managing the factory. Stern is suspicious, another German exploiter looking to profit from Jewish misery, but Stern needs work, needs protection, employment. At a German factory means work card, which means relative safety from deportation. He accepts Schindler's offer while mentally cataloguing all the ways this German will probably disappoint and exploit him. The factory opens in November 1939. Deutsche E-Mail-Fabrik, DEF for short, later called Amelia by the workers, located in the Zablocki district of Krakow. Schindler hires Stern to handle the business details while he handles the German bureaucracy and the schmoozing. The initial workforce is about 150 Jews. They're paid almost nothing. Technically they're paid, but the wages go to the SS and the workers receive only soup and bread. By German-occupied Poland standards, this is almost generous. At least they're not in labour camps. At least they're alive. At least Schindler doesn't beat them, though his German supervisors sometimes do. Schindler in late 1939 and early 1940 is not the hero of later years. He's businessman exploiting captive workforce. He lives lavishly in a confiscated apartment, throws parties for Nazi officials, has affairs with his secretary and with Polish women, spends money on expensive liquor and black market luxuries, bribes SS officers to keep his factory running smoothly. He's profiting enormously from the war, from Jewish labour, from the Nazi occupation. He's everything the stereotypical Nazi businessman is supposed to be: corrupt, hedonistic, morally flexible, caring about money more than human life. But something changes. The exact moment is uncertain. Probably it's not one moment, but accumulation of experiences. Watching the SS round up Jews for deportation, seeing the brutality of the Krakow ghetto liquidation, hearing stories from his workers about what happens in the camps, meeting Jews as individuals rather than as abstract labour force, whatever the cause. Sometime in 1941 or 1942, Schindler transforms from exploiter into protector, from businessman seeking profit into rescuer, risking everything to save lives. The transformation isn't complete or absolute. Schindler continues living well, continues his affairs, continues drinking and partying, continues bribing Nazi officials. But now the bribes serve different purpose. Instead of ensuring smooth business operations, they're buying exemptions from deportations. Instead of maximizing profit, he's minimizing danger to his workers. The factory becomes not just business, but sanctuary. Employment at Schindler's factory means relative safety, means survival. The workers begin calling him Papa Schindler. Though never to his face, they understand he's protecting them, though they're not sure why. March 1941, the Nazis established the Krakow ghetto. 20,000 Jews forced into 15 city blocks. The conditions are horrific: overcrowding, starvation rations, random violence from SS guards. Jews who work outside the ghetto, including Schindler's workers, must return each night. The ghetto becomes holding pen for future deportations to camps. Schindler sees this and begins to understand the Nazi intentions. This isn't just exploitation, it's systematic elimination. The final solution is being implemented. Jews aren't labor force to be exploited indefinitely. They're scheduled for extermination. Schindler's response is to expand his factory's workforce. He tells the SS he needs more workers to meet production quotas. This is partly true. He is producing enamelware and later ammunition for the German military, but he's also creating positions that don't strictly need filling, hiring Jews not because they're cheapest labor, but because employment saves their lives. Stern helps with this, creating elaborate, bureaucratic justifications for why specific Jews are essential workers, why this rabbi or that teacher needs to be working at an enamelware factory. The deception is sophisticated and risky. Discovery means arrest and probably execution. June 1942. Deportations from Krakow ghetto to death camps begin. Trains leave regularly for Belzec and later Auschwitz. Thousands of Jews are deported weekly. The ghetto empties as its residents are murdered. Schindler's workers watch their families disappear, return from work to find their neighborhoods cleared, their relatives gone. The trauma is unimaginable, but they're alive because they're essential workers, because Schindler claims to need them, because his bribes to the SS keep them on the protected lists. The bribes are expensive. Schindler spends enormous sums, cases of liquor, expensive jewelry, cash payments. He's bribing everyone. The local SS commandant Amon, the camp guards, the labor office officials, the railway bureaucrats. Anyone who can interfere with his workers must be paid off. His factory is profitable, but much of the profit goes into these bribes. He's not getting rich anymore. He's spending money to save lives. His lifestyle remains lavish because maintaining the persona of successful hedonistic businessman is part of the deception. Nazi officials trust him because he seems like one of them, corrupt and self-interested. March 1943, the final liquidation of Krakow ghetto. The SS evacuates the remaining Jews, either to Plaszow labor camp or directly to Auschwitz. The liquidation is brutal. Jews are shot in their apartments, in the streets. Children are killed openly. The violence is random and excessive. Schindler watches from horseback on a hill overlooking the ghetto. He sees the murders, the chaos, the terror. This moment, according to later accounts, is his complete moral transformation. Before this, he was helping his workers partly from economic self-interest. After this, he's committed to saving as many lives as possible regardless of cost. The girl in the red coat appears in the liquidation, a small child wandering through the chaos while murder happens around her. Schindler sees her. This image haunts him. In the black and white reality of occupied Poland, she's a spot of colour, symbol of innocence being destroyed. Later he sees her body on a cart of corpses being taken for burning. The girl in the red coat dies like thousands of others. Her death represents all the children being murdered. The complete moral bankruptcy of the Nazi system. For Schindler, she becomes the reason he must do more, must save more, must risk everything. Plaszow labor camp is established on the site of 2 Jewish cemeteries. The Nazi officer Amon commands it. Goth is sadist and murderer. He shoots prisoners from his balcony for entertainment, sets his dogs on inmates, conducts random executions. His brutality is legendary even among SS officers who aren't known for mercy. Schindler's workers are now housed at Plaszow. They're forced to live under Goth's authority. This makes Schindler's protection more essential and more difficult. He must deal directly with Goth, must become his friend while hating everything Goth represents. The friendship between Schindler and Goth is strategic and disturbing. Schindler drinks with Goth, plays cards with him, brings him expensive gifts, listens to his stories about killing Jews, laughs at his jokes, maintains the persona of Nazi party member who enjoys Goeth's company. The whole time, Schindler is bribing Goeth to leave his workers alone, negotiating exemptions from executions, convincing Goeth that certain prisoners are too valuable to kill. The psychological toll of this friendship is enormous. Schindler must pretend to approve of monstrous acts while secretly working to prevent them. Helen Hirsch is Jewish woman, forced to work as Goeth's maid. He beats her regularly. She lives in constant terror. Goeth is attracted to her, which makes her situation worse. He can't act on the attraction because she's Jewish, and that's forbidden. So instead he beats her more. His violence toward Helen is projection of his self-hatred at being attracted to woman he's been taught to see as subhuman. Schindler sees Helen's situation, tries to convince Goeth to let him buy her freedom. Goeth refuses. Helen survives the war, but the trauma of working for Goeth never completely heals. Summer 1944, the Soviet army is advancing from the east. Nazi officials begin evacuating camps and factories, preparing to retreat. Orders come to close Plaszow and send its inmates to Auschwitz for extermination. Schindler's workers face deportation and certain death. This is the crisis moment, the point where Schindler must decide how far he'll go. His options are to accept the closure and save himself, flee to safety with his wealth intact, or risk everything to save his workers. He chooses to risk everything. Schindler proposes relocating his factory to Brunnlitz in the Sudetenland, near his hometown. He'll take his workers with him. They're essential for the factory operation. He needs permission from multiple Nazi agencies, needs to convince officials that this relocation serves the war effort, needs to bribe everyone involved. The bureaucracy is complex and every official wants payment. Schindler spends his remaining wealth on bribes, sells his jewelry and his wife's jewelry, goes into debt, exhausts his credit. Everything he owns goes into securing permission to move the factory and take his workers. The list is created. Stern and Schindler work together to name the Jews who will be relocated. They can't take everyone from Plaszow, only those who can be justified as essential workers. The list becomes literally the difference between life and death. Inclusion means relocation to Schindler's factory and survival. Exclusion means Auschwitz and death. They work through the night adding names, creating bogus job descriptions, claiming that elderly Jews are metalworkers and children are mechanics. The lies are obvious, but the bribes make the officials accept them. 1,200 names go on the list, 1,200 lives to be saved. The list has become legendary. Schindler's List is shorthand for salvation. The document itself is bureaucratic and mundane, names and prisoner numbers in columns, but it represents extraordinary moral act. Schindler choosing to save these specific people at enormous personal risk. Stern's contribution is crucial. He helps select who to save, creates the justifications, manages the bureaucracy. The list is collaboration between German businessman and Jewish accountant, unlikely partnership that saves over 1,000 lives. October 1944, the transport to Brunnlitz. The men leave first. They arrive at the new factory site. It's not ready. No equipment, no housing. It doesn't matter because the purpose isn't production, it's protection. The women and children leave Plaszow a few days later. Their train is misdirected to Auschwitz. Schindler's women arrive at the death camp instead of his factory. This is disaster. Auschwitz is extermination camp. Arrival usually means death within hours. The women are processed, their heads are shaved, they're stripped and sent to showers. They're certain they're about to be gassed. But Schindler acts immediately. He travels to Auschwitz, bribes the commandant, negotiates the release of his workers. This requires massive bribes and enormous risk. Auschwitz doesn't release Jews. People sent there die there. The policy is absolute. But Schindler's bribes and connections work. After 2 weeks, the women are released and sent to Brunnlitz. They're traumatized by their time in Auschwitz, but alive. This rescue from Auschwitz is extraordinary, almost unprecedented. It demonstrates how far Schindler is willing to go, how much he's willing to risk. Brunnlitz factory operates from October 1944 to May 1945. 7 months. The factory produces almost nothing. The ammunition it's supposed to manufacture is deliberately sabotaged. Schindler ensures that none of his factory's output actually works. Shells are improperly assembled. Measurements are wrong. The goal is to produce nothing useful to the German war effort, while maintaining appearance of production. The Nazi inspectors are bribed to accept the substandard output. Schindler claims production problems, technical difficulties, promises improvement that never comes. The workers at Brunnlitz live in barracks. Conditions are poor but far better than camps. They receive more food than normal labour camp rations. Schindler buys food on the black market, spends his remaining wealth feeding his workers. They're not starving like Jews in other camps. They're protected from SS violence. No random executions, no beatings. The factory is sanctuary in the middle of Nazi-controlled territory. The workers understand they're being saved, though they don't fully understand why until after the war. Winter 1944-45. Schindler's finances collapse. He's spent everything on bribes and food and protection. He's deeply in debt. His wife Emily has sold her jewellery. Their apartment is gone. His businesses besides the factory are liquidated. He's broke and getting broker. The factory isn't producing saleable output. His income is gone. He's relying on loans from Jewish organisations and on credit from black market suppliers. He's ruined financially, but still spending money to protect his workers, buying coal to heat the barracks, buying medicine, paying bribes to keep inspectors away. Emily Schindler deserves recognition. She's often overlooked in the narrative, but her role is crucial. She manages the factory's day-to-day operations while Oskar handles the bribes and the Nazi officials. She nurses sick workers, obtains medicine, maintains the deception that the factory is productive. When Oskar is away, she makes decisions that save lives. She's not just supporting her husband's actions, she's actively participating in the rescue. After the war, she and Oskar separate. Their marriage doesn't survive the transition to normal life, but during the war they work together effectively. January 1945, a transport train arrives at Brunnlitz. It's been sitting on a railway siding for days in freezing weather. The boxcars are locked. Inside are Jewish prisoners being transferred between camps. Many are already dead from cold and starvation. The train is technically not Schindler's responsibility. It's just sitting near his factory. He could ignore it. Instead, he bribes the guards to let him open the cars. 100 prisoners are still alive barely. Schindler brings them into his factory. Emily nurses them. About a dozen die, but most survive. This rescue wasn't planned. It was opportunity to save more lives, and Schindler took it. February-April 1945. Nazi Germany is collapsing. The Eastern Front is crumbling. The Western Allies are advancing. The war is obviously lost. Nazi officials are fleeing or preparing to flee. Schindler could leave, could disappear into the chaos, could save himself. Instead, he stays at Brunnlitz protecting his workers until the very end. He's worried that retreating SS units will massacre Jews before leaving. This happens at other camps and factories. SS kills prisoners to eliminate witnesses. Schindler's presence and his remaining connections protect his workers from this fate. May 7, 1945, Germany surrenders. The war in Europe ends. Schindler gathers his workers and gives a speech. The SS guards have fled. Soviet armies approaching. The workers are free. Schindler tells them they're no longer prisoners, they're free people. He asks them not to seek revenge, not to become like their oppressors. The emotional scene is powerful. Workers crying, embracing, celebrating survival. Schindler breaks down, tells Stern he could have saved more, could have sold his car and saved 10 more people, sold his Nazi pin and saved 2 more. The guilt at not saving everyone haunts him. The workers give Schindler a ring made from gold tooth of one of them, engraved with Talmudic verse. Whoever saves one life saves the world entire. The ring symbolizes their gratitude. Schindler wears it until his death. The gift is simple but profound. They have nothing to give except this ring. It represents everything: their survival, their gratitude, their understanding of what he did for them. May 9th, 1945, Schindler flees. If he stays, the Soviets will arrest him. He's a German industrialist who employed slave labour. The Soviets won't recognise that he saved lives. They'll see Nazi collaborator. He leaves with Emily, driving west toward American lines. Some of his workers escort him part of the way. They give him letters testifying to his actions. These letters will save him when American soldiers question why a Nazi Party member is fleeing east to west. The letters explain everything, prove he saved lives. The Americans let him through. Post-war life is difficult for Schindler. He's broke, traumatized, unable to adjust to normal peacetime existence. He tries business ventures that fail, moves to Argentina in 1949, where he attempts farming, fails at that too, returns to Germany in 1958, lives in small apartment on pension from Jewish organizations and donations from survivors. He's celebrated by some as hero, but criticized by others who remember his war profiteering and exploitation before he became rescuer. His reputation is complicated because his actions were complicated. The survivors of Schindler's List, the Schindlerjuden, maintain connection with him after the war. They support him financially when he's destitute. They visit him. They testify on his behalf when he's investigated for war crimes. They understand that he saved them at enormous personal cost. They defend him against critics who focus on his early war profiteering or his continued drinking and affairs. They see the complete person, flawed but ultimately heroic. They ensure he's recognized as righteous Gentile by Yad Vashem in 1963. The Yad Vashem recognition is important validation. Righteous among the nations is honor given to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. Schindler qualifies clearly. He risked execution to save 1,200 people. He spent his fortune. He could have profited from the war and fled safely. Instead, he chose to save lives. The recognition includes tree planted in his name at Yad Vashem, symbolic immortality, his name permanently associated with rescue and resistance. October 9th, 1974. Schindler dies in Germany. He's 66 years old. Lived long enough to see his actions recognized, but not long enough to see them widely known. His death receives little notice. Small obituaries. Most people don't know who he is. He's buried in Jerusalem at his request. The only former Nazi Party member buried on Mount Zion. His grave is visited by survivors and their descendants. Stones are placed on the grave in Jewish tradition. Even decades after his death, people come to honor him. The story remains relatively obscure until 1982, when Australian novelist Thomas Keneally publishes Schindler's Ark, released in the US as Schindler's List. Keneally learned about Schindler by chance, met Leopold Pfefferberg, one of the survivors, who had been trying for years to get someone to tell the story. Keneally researched extensively, interviewed survivors. The book wins the Booker Prize, brings international attention to Schindler's actions, but it's Steven Spielberg's 1993 film adaptation that makes Schindler famous worldwide. Spielberg's Schindler's List is a cultural phenomenon. The film wins 7 Academy Awards including Best Picture. It's shown in schools, becomes required viewing. The image of Schindler transforms from unknown businessman to iconic hero. The film takes liberties with details, but captures essential truth, that one man chose to save lives when saving lives required extraordinary courage and sacrifice. That ordinary person with significant flaws can do extraordinary good. That individual moral choice matters even in the midst of systematic evil. The film's legacy is complex. It introduces millions of people to Schindler's story and by extension to the Holocaust. But it also oversimplifies. The film's Schindler is more consistently heroic than the real Schindler, who remained morally ambiguous. The film makes the transformation from profiteer to rescuer more complete and dramatic than it actually was. Real Schindler was saving lives while still living lavishly, still having affairs, still drinking heavily. He wasn't saint, he was complicated man who made extraordinary choice. The debate about Schindler's motivations continues. Why did he do it? Was it genuine moral awakening, gradual humanization through contact with his workers, calculation that being rescuer would help him after Germany lost, psychological need to rebel against authority? Combination of all these factors, Schindler himself gave different answers at different times. Sometimes he said he was just doing what anyone would do. Other times he suggested he was trying to defy the system. The true motivation probably died with him. What matters is not why, but that he did it. The 200 Schindlerjuden survived the war. They emigrated to Israel, the United States, other countries. They rebuilt their lives, had children and grandchildren. By 2000 there were estimated to be 7,000 descendants of Schindler's Jews. 7,000 people alive because one man chose to save their ancestors. The demographic impact of his actions continues expanding. Every generation multiplies the number of people who owe their existence to Schindler's choices. The criticism of Schindler focuses on several points. He was Nazi Party member, who initially profited from slave labor. His early war years were exploitative. He lived well while his workers suffered. His transformation to rescuer was gradual, not immediate. After the war, he continued drinking heavily and having affairs. These criticisms are valid. Schindler was not moral exemplar in all aspects of life, but these flaws make his heroism more remarkable, not less. He wasn't predestined to be hero. He chose heroism despite and, perhaps because of his flaws. The comparison to other rescuers is instructive. Raoul Wallenberg saved tens of thousands in Hungary. Tuna Sugihara saved thousands with Japanese transit visas. These men were diplomats acting within official capacity, however courageously. Schindler was private citizen acting against his government, risking execution, spending personal fortune. His rescue operation was entirely illegal. Every action could have resulted in arrest and death. The level of personal risk he accepted was extraordinary even compared to other rescuers. The factory at Brunnlitz is preserved as memorial. Visitors can see where Schindler's Jews worked and lived. The site includes a museum documenting the rescue, personal testimonies from survivors, artifacts from the war years. The preservation ensures that future generations can connect physically to the story, can understand that these events happened in real places to real people, that Schindler's actions were not legend but history. The question of whether Schindler redeemed himself through his actions is theological and personal. He saved 1,200 lives, but he initially profited from their suffering. He risked everything eventually, but he joined the Nazi Party willingly initially. Does the good he did erase the bad? Does heroism redeem earlier exploitation? Survivors overwhelmingly say yes. He redeemed himself completely. They focus on what he became, not what he was. Critics say the question itself is wrong. Good acts don't erase bad acts. Both exist simultaneously. The moral accounting is complex. The psychological profile of Schindler is fascinating. He was risk-taker, con-man, hedonist. These traits served him as businessman and as rescuer. His ability to charm and manipulate made him effective at bribing Nazi officials. His willingness to take risks made him capable of attempting the rescue. His disregard for rules made him willing to break laws to save lives. The same characteristics that made him morally questionable businessman made him effective rescuer. Personality traits are morally neutral. Their moral value depends on how they're applied. The role of Itzhak Stern deserves more emphasis. Stern was collaborator in the rescue. He managed the lists, created bureaucratic justifications, maintained the deception. Without Stern's cooperation and expertise, Schindler couldn't have saved as many people. Stern survived the war, emigrated to Israel, maintained contact with Schindler, testified about his actions. Stern's quiet competence and moral clarity complemented Schindler's charisma and connections. The rescue was partnership, not solo act. The economic cost to Schindler was total. He spent his entire fortune, went deeply into debt, emerged from the war bankrupt. Post-war business ventures failed. He lived on charity from survivors and pension from Jewish organizations. He never recovered financially. The bribes and black market purchases and worker support consumed everything he owned. When he died, he owned essentially nothing. His wealth was converted entirely into saved lives. The transaction was complete, money for survival. The emotional cost was equally severe. The stress of maintaining deception for years, befriending men like Goth while secretly subverting them, watching atrocities he couldn't prevent, living with constant fear of discovery. This produced psychological trauma that manifested as drinking and inability to maintain relationships. Schindler's post-war difficulties weren't just financial but psychological. He was damaged by his experiences. PTSD wasn't recognized diagnosis, but he clearly suffered from it. The nightmares and the drinking and the failed relationships all suggest unprocessed trauma. The historical significance of Schindler's story is its demonstration that individual moral choice mattered even during the Holocaust. The Holocaust's systematic nature tempts us to see it as inevitable, unstoppable, but Schindler proves that individuals could resist, could save lives, could make choices that mattered. His story is antidote to historical determinism, reminder that people are not simply swept along. By historical forces, they make choices. Choices have consequences. Choosing to save lives was possible even in Nazi Germany. The educational value of Schindler's story is its accessibility. The Holocaust scale is incomprehensible. 6 million murdered is number too large to grasp emotionally, but 200 people saved is comprehensible. Students can understand one man saving specific people. They can see themselves potentially making similar choices. The story makes the Holocaust personal and moral choice tangible. It's pedagogically valuable because it provides concrete example of resistance and rescue. The contemporary relevance is uncomfortable. Schindler's story asks what we would do in similar circumstances. Would we risk everything to save lives? Would we resist systematic evil? Would we prioritize profit or people? These questions aren't historical. They're ongoing. Genocide continues in various forms. Exploitation of vulnerable populations continues. The moral choices Schindler faced aren't safely in the past. They recur in different contexts. His story is mirror asking what we would do. Remember Oskar Schindler not as saint but as complicated man who made extraordinary choices. He was Nazi party member and war profiteer who became rescuer. He was husband who had affairs and alcoholic who drank heavily. He was charming con man and genuine hero. All these things are true simultaneously. He wasn't morally pure individual doing good from pure motives. He was flawed person who chose to save lives despite and perhaps because of his flaws. His humanity is what makes his heroism meaningful. Remember, the Just 200 Schindlerjuden, whose survival testifies to the power of individual moral choice. They lived because one man decided their lives mattered more than his safety or wealth. Their children and grandchildren exist because of choices Schindler made between 1939 and 1945. The demographic ripples of his actions continue expanding. The number of people alive because of him grows with each generation. Remember that heroism doesn't require moral perfection, that flawed people can do extraordinary good, that the capacity for moral choice exists even in immoral systems, that individual actions matter even when systematic evil seems overwhelming, that Schindler's story is not about exceptional person, but about exception choices available to ordinary people who decide that saving lives justifies risking everything. This is Oskar Schindler's story, 1939 to 1945, 6 years when businessman and Nazi party member transformed into rescuer and hero, when 200 Jews survived because one man decided to save them, when enormous personal sacrifice preserved lives that would otherwise have been exterminated, when moral complexity met moral clarity and produced actions that saved a community, when the worst of times revealed that the capacity for good exists even in unlikely people, when Schindler proved that whoever saves one life saves the world entire.